Susan, what are you doing? As we returned from shopping, we saw a moving truck in front of our house. My in-laws were there, looking surprised. My mother-in-law was directing the movers and said, "Please don't just barge into our house on your own accord. Don't get sassy with me, young lady. Hurry up and open the door." My father-in-law reached for my purse, and I clutched it, stepping back. My mother-in-law laughed sinisterly and told the movers to leave. I was speechless, but Tom, who had heard everything, started trembling violently. "Do you not know who you're talking to, Mom?" he said. I knew it was time to tell the truth. My name is Christy Grubb. I'm 48 years old, and I run an insurance agency that I took over from my father. I love having everything organized, and this job suits me perfectly. We've maintained good relationships with old acquaintances, and business has been booming. I met Tom when I was 30 at a work event. A client, a longtime friend of my father, introduced us. Tom was 2 years older, calm and refined. He had just broken up with a long-term girlfriend who had cheated on him. We hit it off quickly and started dating. My mother wasn't in good health, and I wanted to fulfill her wish to see me in a wedding dress, so I was actively seeking a marriage partner. I think I rushed things a bit. Tom wasn't as keen on getting married, but respected my feelings. 6 months after we met, he proposed, and I happily accepted. We had a small family wedding, and my mother looked so happy. She passed away the following month, but thanks to Tom, I could fulfill her last wish. Tom stayed by my side and held my hand even at my mother's funeral. I decided to cherish him for the rest of my life. Even after 5 years of marriage, Tom and I hadn't had children. We believed children are a gift from heaven, so we didn't feel rushed. However, my in-laws kept bringing it up. When we went to greet them for New Year's, Tom was reluctant, but we went because my mother-in-law asked us directly. "No child yet? When are you going to give me a grandchild?" Tom replied, "Mom, we've told you we're leaving it up to nature." "If you're going to talk like that, we're leaving." "I understand, but maybe the field is barren," she said. "That's rude to Christy," Tom snapped. I apologized and suggested we leave. We hadn't even exchanged New Year's greetings. Tom felt bad and apologized to me in the car. "I'm really sorry for making you feel uncomfortable." "I'm fine." "I'm sorry for making you feel bad," I replied. "It's fine for me. They are my parents after all, but now my family is you. If anyone, even my parents, hurts you, I'm ready to cut ties with them," he said. Since then, Tom made it a point to distance me from his parents. We even moved to a new place. They tried reaching out multiple times, but Tom ignored their calls. For the next 13 years, I had little to no contact with my in-laws except during family events like weddings or funerals. By our 40s, they stopped bringing up grandchildren, which was a relief. One day, out of the blue, they found our place and paid a surprise visit. Tom was out with a friend, and I was alone. My in-laws barged in, nosily rummaging through our stuff. "Goodness, you two still share the same bed at your age. How scandalous. Christy, with these kind of undergarments, don't you think Tom won't be excited?" Susan sneered, ignoring my disgusted expression. They continued to snoop around, making snide comments. "This is probably why you guys don't have any grandkids," Susan said. Now, dear, there's still hope," she exclaimed, shoving a crumpled newspaper article into my hands. It was about a woman who gave birth at 60. Realizing their implication, I felt a chill down my spine. "We've been too lenient on you. Even at your age, you could still have kids. You might as well move in with us," she suggested. "I'm home. We have guests," Tom called out. Little did they know, Tom and I had been living with my father since we moved. Tom cared deeply for my dad, and my dad treated Tom like his own son. Seeing my dad, they looked shocked. You're having Tom support your own father, too. Normally, one would first show gratitude to their husband's parents. I was at a loss for words, not knowing how to respond to Mike and Susan's entitled behavior. We're always grateful for your kindness. I really didn't expect to see Christy's father here. Isn't it a blow to your pride relying on my son? My dad replied with a vague smile. They looked visibly irritated. Mom, Dad, how did you even find this place? Tom, who had returned early because his friend wasn't feeling well, stormed in with a furious expression. Susan replied nonchalantly, You never told us, so we hired a detective. It was pretty pricey. You'll pay for it, right? No way in hell I'm going to pay for that, Tom shouted. He stomped over to Susan, grabbed her by the clothes, and dragged her out of the room against her will. Hey, that hurts! What are you doing? Tom, you're hurting your mother. Stop it right now. Susan screamed while Mike's loud shouts echoed through the room. Tom didn't care and continued to drag Susan to the entrance, then pushed her out of the house. Don't ever come back here, and I'm even considering cutting ties with you guys. Oh my, is this Christy's doing? What kind of wife have you married? Susan protested. It has nothing to do with Christy. I've made up my mind. Get lost. Once Tom threatened to call the police, they reluctantly left. Tom apologized to me and my father. I'm really sorry. I can't believe they went as far as hiring a detective to find us. They've been incredibly rude. No, Tom, it's not your fault. I know you're a good kid. Come on, let's eat together, my dad said with tears in his eyes. Tom thanked my father repeatedly. That night, the three of us had a pleasant dinner together. We decided not to move and to call the police if they showed up again. Surprisingly, weeks passed without seeing them, and we thought we could continue our quiet life. A month later, my father passed away. Tom and I went on a trip to buy some memorabilia of my father. On the way back, I couldn't help but scream out, What are you doing, Susan? What we saw were movers and my in-laws in front of our house. Susan glanced at me in surprise and then continued giving instructions to the movers. Don't just enter the house without permission. Please don't talk back to me, young lady. Just open the door. Mike reached out for my bag, and I hugged it tightly, stepping back. Susan, with a sinister smile, continued, Outsiders should leave immediately. I was stunned by her words and couldn't respond. Tom, who had heard everything, was trembling with anger, his face turning red. Do you not know who you're talking to, Mom? What are you talking about? Feeling this was the right moment to tell them the truth. I decided to speak. This is my house. Susan stared at me with a confused and accusatory look. What are you talking about? You made Tom buy this house, right? How shameless can you be? Tom sighed deeply and began to speak. This is genuinely Christy's house. I'm just living here with her permission. Susan asked, Is Christy blackmailing you? Poor thing, you don't have to tell such obvious lies. Besides, Christy is a housewife, right? Tom's eyebrows shot up. He was angry that she implied I was manipulating him, and also that she called me a housewife. What do you mean Christy is a housewife? Christy runs an insurance agency. What are you talking about? She's always at home, going to spas and dining at fancy restaurants with some unknown man. The man Susan mentioned was my client. I had recently met an old client of my father's for lunch to discuss business. Tom knew about it and had agreed to it. If Susan had hired a detective, she should know I went home alone after lunch. She clearly wanted to break us up. That person is an acquaintance of mine and a client of Christie's. I couldn't go because of work, but we do dine together occasionally. Tom, you're being deceived. It's not too late. You can marry a younger woman and have grandchildren. I would hate to marry anyone other than Christie. Besides, I can't have kids with anyone else anyway. What do you mean? At Tom's shout, Susan, Mike, and I were all dumbfounded. Neither Tom nor I had undergone fertility tests because we didn't want to blame ourselves if there was an issue. But a few years ago, after I had a high fever, a doctor recommended I get tested. I did it secretly and found out I was born infertile. I hadn't told Tom because I feared he might leave me. Just because you can't have kids doesn't mean I would ever leave you, I said. Yeah, I know, but I couldn't help feeling insecure. I instinctively hugged Tom, and he hugged me back. I was filled with the resolve to cherish Tom forever. What do you mean you can't have kids? You were a defective product all along. Is this a joke? Have you been deceiving us all this time? My in-laws seemed to forget about me and started berating Tom. He looked at them coldly. I've told you time and time again that I'm not your toy. To call your own son a defective product is not something parents should do. What's wrong with calling a defective product a defective product? Susan was enraged. She grabbed Tom by the chest, approaching him threateningly. Then Tom whispered a man's name softly. Hearing it, Susan's face turned pale, and she backed away. Who is that? Mike asked, confused. That's the name of my biological father. What are you talking about? Your father is me. I didn't know until recently either. Remember when you hired a detective to follow me? Well, I hired one too, and found out a lot of interesting things. Tom showed his phone, screaming to Mike. Susan's face went white, and Mike's turned bright red as he began to tremble. Were you cheating on me? Is this guy Tom's father? Have you been cheating for 50 years? That's not it. What do you mean that's not it? You dare deny it when you were hugging each other. Ignoring my in-laws' loud bickering, Tom and I asked the moving company to relocate our stuff to a nearby storage unit. There was an extra charge, but since my in-laws started this mess, it only seemed fair they shoulder the burden. So I've been raising another man's son. I'm horrified at spending money on a defective product who isn't even related to me by blood. Tom, you better take responsibility and support me. Got it? No way, Tom replied. What? You have an obligation to support me. My father-in-law lunged at Tom, but Tom easily pulled away, flashing a smile. The only one who needs to take responsibility is Mom. I was just born. Besides, you didn't even pay for my high school and college expenses. I've been living on my own since high school. How can you say that while I was desperately earning tuition money, unable to hang out with friends, you were stealing my part-time job money? What more do you expect me to say to such a father? That's when I finally understood why Tom disliked his father so much. However, his father simply acted as if it was all justified. A child's money is the parent's money, and so is the child's spouse's money. But we're not related by blood, only on paper. If you really want to cut ties, then return all the money we spent on you. I already did. I've been sending money back every month. Huh? Sending money? I knew Tom had been sending money to his parents' house, even more than they asked for, just to keep them from getting involved with us. However, his father seemed genuinely unaware of the money. See, I've been transferring $1,500 every month. Hey, what's going on? I get it. Mom has been using all my money for herself and her lover. What Susan could only do was fidget as her husband approached her and slapped her across the face. Initially shocked, she soon glared at him and screeched, "How dare you?" You should be grateful that a man with no money or status could marry me. He's a man with both money and status. Staying married to you was just convenient for enjoying life with him. I even let you raise his child, didn't I? Be thankful. Are you kidding me? You said you were pregnant, so I married you, even though. Your father beat me up, so what? It would have been pitiful if he got beaten up. My father-in-law was speechless at Susan's sudden and drastic change in attitude. Just then, Susan's smartphone began ringing loudly. She checked it, her face lighting up as she answered in a sweet, cooing voice. "Hello, darling. What's up?" I shuddered at hearing Susan's voice for the first time. Tom, standing beside me, had a twisted expression, though he was smiling. I would soon understand the meaning behind that smile. "Wait, you're not darling, ma'am." "What?" "Oh no, this is a mistake, or rather, all of it. Alimony. $10 million. Susan frantically spoke into the phone but was forcefully cut off and left in a daze. Tom started chuckling. All the evidence, photos, and recordings must have reached them. "What?" "This is your fault. It's called sharing information. Oh, and by the way, she has no intention of divorcing your boyfriend. He's a son-in-law in her family after all. Tough times ahead for you." "A son-in-law? You didn't even know that." "Well, it seems like he's keeping a number of mistresses. He was told by his wife to only cheat with younger women, right? He must be getting an earful right about now." "Mistresses? But he said he loved only me." Stunned by these shocking truths, Susan slumped to the ground. Mike looked down at her with satisfaction and then suddenly turned to Tom with a thought. It must have been tough having such a mother. "All right, I'll let bygones be bygones this time. Let's live together, just the three of us. Cut ties with your mother, and it'll be you, me, and Christy. Christy, I'll wash your back for you. Stay away from Christy." Unfazed by Tom's words, Mike approached me. As soon as his hand landed on my shoulder, I grabbed it and threw him to the ground. Oof! Surprised and confused, Mike didn't understand what had just happened. I looked down at him with a cold gaze. I had been attending self-defense classes since I was young. Though my job in insurance involved dealing with companies, there were still good and bad encounters depending on the client. I started learning self-defense so I could escape if I ever found myself in a dubious situation. This was one of the conditions my father set for me to take over the company. Gradually, I started enjoying the classes and kept attending them even after taking over the business. I wondered if I had gone too far with a 75-year-old man like Mike, but seeing Tom looking satisfied as he gazed down at his father, I felt a bit relieved. Mike seemed too shocked to speak, but then Susan, my mother-in-law, started talking. "Christy, that was impressive. I'm sure you can handle anything. How about this? Why don't you pay the alimony to that woman for me? If we live together, we could save on living expenses, and I can help with the household chores. And about kids, we could always adopt. I'll take good care of them. Are you kidding me? There's no way I'm letting a woman like you into my precious house filled with memories of me, Tom, and my father. And why should I be the one to pay the alimony? You should pay it yourself." I found myself saying everything I had been thinking directly to Susan. She was taken aback at first, having never been spoken to like that before, but her face quickly turned red as she started yelling again. "How dare you talk to your husband's mother like that? I've already told the neighbors we'd be moving in, and besides, that house is already being demolished." "That's right. I don't have a house to live in anymore, so forget about her. Let me stay." "What are you saying?" "I'm his mother. He should be living with me." Mike, responding to Susan's words, stood up from the ground and shouted back. While Susan argued fervently, Tom calmly and seriously communicated our intentions. Neither of you will be living with us. We've decided to cut ties completely. If you continue to make a scene here, we will call the police. At the mention of the police, my in-laws' faces went pale, and they backed away. Still arguing, they disappeared toward the train station. Later on, Mike and Susan got a divorce. However, since neither of them had any money, they ended up living together again. Mike tried to claim alimony from Susan and her lover, but it was offset by a claim from the lover's wife. Susan, having never worked long hours in her life, found it difficult to hold down a job. She would quit at the slightest inconvenience and was already struggling with daily expenses. Mike was in a similar situation, and they were just barely getting by with their combined incomes. The lover, on the other hand, was squeezed dry. He lost his rights as the next company president and is now confined to his house. His wife couldn't easily forgive a 50-year affair, and I heard she intends to take him for all he's worth. I thought Tom would be down after such an incident, but surprisingly, he got over it quickly and is doing well. Apparently, the lover's family approached him, suggesting that since he shares blood with the lover, he could become their heir. However, Tom, not a fan of competition and not particularly greedy, simply said, "That's too much for me to handle," and signed the paperwork to renounce the inheritance. While I feel a bit disappointed, it's so like Tom, and I'm happy about it. As for me, a business associate recently asked if I wanted to adopt a cat they had found, and I'm currently excitedly looking up cat towers. I've already decided on a name, Marine. It's a tribute to the frequent fishing trips my father and Tom used to go on, and the cat's eyes are as blue as the sea. Even Tom seems to be in high spirits, eagerly anticipating the arrival of our new family member. The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of my business associate. "Well, time to meet our new family member," I said excitedly as I opened the door and greeted them. "Welcome."